Bam! We're back again. So, the next guest that I'd like to invite is a very dear, very close friend from childhood that I grew up with. His name is Jason Bear. Jason Bear grew up a little outside of Toronto at an early age. His curiosity would take him on great adventures, and he would also lead him to lessons he would later use in life. He has since then traveled most of the world, learning, growing, expanding his perspective, sharing his experience with those around him. He is the father of two beautiful children, has created his own companies, worked in the cannabis industry, and is constantly finding ways to better himself and those around him. So, without further ado,
Mm.
Hey, buddy.
Yeah, buddy.
Sorry, just sitting in. Get comfy here. How are you?
I'm good, man. How you doing?
Very good, thank you. Very good.
Yeah, so I gave
So,
a little bit of brief intro about you, man, and you know, the way I see it is like it's interesting because a lot of the guests I've met for a year, I've met some guests for um, 5 years or whatever, but let's
we've
see,
known each other a long
I've
time.
known you,
Very long
yeah,
time.
we've yeah, we've known each other our whole pretty much our whole lives, and it's been great. I'd probably say like a lot of my help and development became because of my friendship with you, especially growing up as a kid that got to a point that I didn't know who I was, and I was constantly trying to be and search for other things, but yet you always just accepted me for who I was. Like you never asked me to be something else. You never asked me to become something else. You were just like, dude, just you just allowed me to be me however I showed up. And like as a kid, that's super powerful. So,
Yeah,
I thank you for that. But,
I think a lot
as
of people
yourself, like,
strive for that, right? I mean, just in life, but at a young age, there's so much pressure from, from other forces, whether it be like the cool group or whatever it may be. So to find a friendship like that, you're right, it's not only is it unique, but it's it gives you that warm fuzzy feeling inside. You've got a solid friend, and I felt the same way, bro. Obviously, that's reciprocated. I've known you for I couldn't even tell you 25 years. I think I probably met you when I was 11 years old, right? 10 or 11 years old.
yeah,
So and we've been friends since then. So it's probably the longest lasting friendship I've had. You and I have been in contact since then, and you went away for a few years, but when you came back, same thing, right? It's like you don't miss a beat, and that's how
hmm
I think you can really know that you've got a real one, a real good friend.
for sure, man. So, yeah, man, tell me about yourself.
About myself, well,
Yeah.
let's see. I am 36 years old. I am married to a beautiful woman named Alana, who I have two children with. Recently worked in the cannabis industry, not so much anymore. I'm trying to sort of segue out of it, but new opportunities on the horizon. So, I've always been sort of a curious person, very interested in I wouldn't call them conspiracy. I guess you could call them conspiracy theories, but for the most part, like there's a lot of like rabbit holes that I've gone down personally, and more recently as well. Things that a lot of people, are either on sort of one side of or not. And I think you're kind of the same. You know what I mean? We both tend to have that sort of instinct to ask questions and to dig more for more information. Because I really do believe there's this whole other world out there that we really just don't know a lot about. And lately I've been getting deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole. My wife can even tell you, I watch a lot and read a lot of stuff that it does. It has a huge impact on me, man. But I think we're all just on a sort of a quest, right? To find like our own truth, our own. We're all on a journey of self-discovery, trying to find out who we are as a person, and to a larger extent as a people. I think we are sort of like this lost. We're like this lost group of people. We don't have
hmm
a great idea of where we came from. Why we're here. All those questions, And that to me is the most intriguing of all, because there's just so many there's just so many possibilities. Not to say anybody's wrong or right. I'm not a scientist. I seriously do I'm not like, qualified to really be even talking on the subject, but you know what I mean? There's so much information at hand these days with the internet and all that, that I think that as this life continues, it's only gonna like, like snowball and get bigger and bigger and bigger until the questions eventually get asked or answered. And I firmly believe that, I try every day to learn something about, that. And the only way to really do that is to ask those questions and to look into that type of information. So, you know,
Cool, man. So, there's a lot of questions that we ask, but like, tell me about, um, an awakening moment or moment that changed where like your answer, your questions led you somewhere. Or, sorry, let me just rephrase that. Let's say, tell me about one of your awakening moments.
minute there, but I think I understood the question. I got the first part of it. The question was like an awakening moment, basically, right? When was your awakening moment? So I've had quite a few, man. I couldn't like to have like I couldn't say I have like a defining moment, but I think we all have defining moments when, there's just you kind of look up to the sky or the stars, and you ask the it's not even a question, it's something that just sort of comes to you, it comes to your mind.
Hmm.
um I've I've had those moments, traveling abroad, being completely by myself, being thousands of miles away from home. I've had similar experiences being at home and looking up in the sky. I've also had those types of moments being on psychedelics, and like, like there's always I don't try to look to like one tiny thing that I say, oh, that was a defining moment. I just think that there's been so many in my life
Hmm.
that they sort of paint a picture as opposed to just like, pinpointing something on a map. It's sort of like looking at the map as a whole. And I can think back, even just a few years ago, I've had, an experience like that that sort of opened up my awareness and my perspective and changed not only the way I saw the world, but the way I thought, the way I think. So, you know, um, that's why, I'm a big fan of what it is you're doing now, because I know that's a huge part of, what you're talking about, and, what you preach. It's like those are those are important things in life, like it's not just about discovering yourself, but like there's this whole wide world of opportunity and all, God, I could go on for a million years about this type of stuff, but you know what I mean? For me, I think the most defining moments I had were moments where I felt the most vulnerable. And, that would probably be when I was traveling, experiencing different cultures, just really relying on yourself, knowing that you're sort of kind of alone, I feel like a lot of people feel like that, like they're alone in the universe. And when you really, even if you don't have that feeling, when you get that feeling, it kind of changes you. It makes you, it just makes you question, like, your whole pattern of thought, um, and the way it guides you, the way you look to the future. Um, I know you have a ton of experience traveling too. I met you in China after you'd been there for, I think, around 8 or 9 years, and that was a huge eye-opening experience for me too, right? Because I never had such a close friend that had made such large changes in their own life, and that had a huge impact on me, because it was like, wow, like, like taking that chance and that opportunity really can change your life.
Hmm.
Um, and that alone made me want to travel more. That was actually one of the first times I'd ever traveled that far alone. Before I was with you in China, I was in Turkey, I was in Greece, I was all over places in Europe. Um, and it really does make you, when you're self-reliant and you're so far away from home and you don't have the comforts and luxuries of the things that, keep you sort of coddled, it just changes your thought process and the way you think. And and not only that, it's beautiful to just experience different cultures and, the way other people live their lives and govern their
Hmm.
lives. And you know having the privilege of being able to travel, and see those places is probably been one of the main, I think, the main things that's helped me open up, and see the world from different perspectives.
Interesting. So when you talk about traveling and like opening you up and seeing new things, like what was, do you remember your stance of how you were before you went into your long travels and how you saw the world after?
Um, yeah, I do. I mean, I'm, I have like sort of a weird story because I was born in New Orleans and then my family's all from South Africa. So I lived in South Africa until I was about 5, and then we immigrated here to Canada. So I already had a little bit of like the travel because I'd be going back and forth as a kid.
Hmm.
But when you go to those places, especially places like China, places like Africa, anywhere really in Asia, the life is just very different there.
Yeah.
Anytime you experience a place that has such degrees of poverty, like real third world poverty, um, it puts your life in perspective. You see, how you see people, kids smiling, laughing, playing on the street, and they have nothing. They're living in a shanty town. They're playing with like a crunched up piece of paper as a soccer ball, and and they're happy. Like
Hmm.
there's nothing that you can say that's going to make them feel otherwise. And those moments to me, um, they paint that that's that they open you up because you're like, holy shit, you're like, I'm so privileged, I'm so lucky to be living where I live, I'm so lucky to have the friends and family and the support that I have, because a lot of people just don't have it. They don't have, you take what you have for granted until you see firsthand. You can see pictures on the news, you can see a lot of that stuff. It's not the same until you really truly experience it. You know what I mean? That's a whole different story to me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
How have you taken like those experiences that you've had from travel and actually like incorporated them in your life?
um how I'd incorporate them in my life. I think it's just like kindness, just like generally just being kind and having a positive outlook. Um, a lot of people, regardless of traveling or not, they just seem to have they don't want to open themselves up to the idea of whatever it may be, and I think I think traveling for me at least, it did that. It certainly opened my mind up to the idea of different realities and different circumstances for for certain people. And to this day, I love to travel. It doesn't matter where I go. Um, I just like to be anywhere because you just feel like you're crossing off something on the list. And for me, there's a lot of places that I still haven't been, a lot of places I'd still like to go. A little bit tougher now that I have young kids. But I think eventually, that is a goal of mine because I know how much, it's like people say, right? You can spend a ton of money on stuff, or you can spend a ton of money on experiences. The experiences are the things that really last. The
Hmm.
memories, the things that that stay in your head. And for me, that couldn't be more true. I think back to the first time I went to Thailand, the first time I went to China, the first time, like all those places, they were just really eye-opening experiences for me. Meeting you, being in People's Square in Shanghai, and like literally having a million people like around me. I'd never experienced anything like that. It was truly like mind-boggling. I was just, I didn't even take into account that how many people really lived in China. Like it does it kind of stuns you.
Hmm.
So and seeing you there for the first time and you were speaking Mandarin, that fucked me up. I was like, what? Like, it took it took a while for me to process that. And to this day, it's something that I won't forget. When we got in that cab, because you and I we conversed for some time, but until we really got in that cab and I saw you speaking, with foreign people in their language, and I was like, holy shit! I'm like, this guy's really he's really been here for a while, Um, and I think I value those experiences more than I really value anything else. Over as time elapses, it doesn't matter which way you look at it. Those experiences help define the person that you're going to end up becoming. Especially for me because I really did find that um, every no matter where it was, different places have different impacts on you, right? If you're going to Africa and you see like the shanty towns and you see a million people, a little, it changes the way you think about things, right? Um, you may not have the same outlook that you once had on humanity. It certainly changed me, and I saw that at a very young age. I know you probably experienced the exact same thing in China, right? You were witnessing it every day. So, those experiences, they give you a broader outlook on sort of life. Not just you're not just looking at yourself, you're sort of looking outwards. And I think for me that was probably the main, I wouldn't call it awakening moment, but it certainly opened up my mind to those types of thoughts, you know?
Yeah, for sure, man. I believe that all not for the ones of us that are blessed and have the fortune of traveling and to see other countries and other places, I think it's really it's an eye opener because watching something on TV, reading something in a book means nothing until you're actually in the country,
Yeah,
smelling it, feeling it,
yeah,
interacting with the people. You don't know anything about a culture until you're actually in the culture,
yeah,
and then it opens you up.
yeah,
Like, because the thing is, you feel so comfortable in your culture, but then you go to another one and then you get uncomfortable, and that causes you to ask questions, and those questions ask you to continue to go on a search and question the
yeah.
things that are happening in your own life.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
I,
I think that you nailed it on the head with the uncomfortable feeling, because the second you take that step outside of your comfort zone, you're already experiencing something that you're not used to. And it changes something in your mind, because it gives you that sort of it's one of those things that's hard to put into words, but you know what I mean.
mm,
It's a thought provoking type of experience. You just you're thinking on different terms, not on the same wavelength that you're used to.
but
Um,
you have to rely on completely different ways. Like I remember my first time I was in I was in Nanjing, the city I was living in, and like
mhm.
it was late at night. I'm tired. Like I just want to get into a taxi, and I got into a taxi, and the guy looks at me and speaks to me in Mandarin, and I'm like, oh no, like I
Like,
don't even know
oh
how to get off.
fuck, like, I don't know how to
But
talk to people.
the thing is, like he looked at me, I looked at him, and he's like I know, like nowadays, like I know, like do you speak Chinese? I know he was asking me that, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and I looked at him, I'm like, I don't understand what you're saying, and we're like looking at each other, but we're laughing, and I'm just like that way, and I pointed. We went on this like epic journey, and like honestly, like we didn't speak to each other, but we created this dope bond together that like I still remember this guy to this day, and this was like
Yeah. I have
years ago.
similar experiences, man. Len and I were the same. When we were in Thailand, we took a trip to a hotel that you were supposed to get to. This hotel didn't really have like a front entrance. The way to get there was by boat. And we
Hmm.
didn't know that. So, like they're all talking in Thai, the cabbies, they're like arguing with each other. And I thought it was kind of weird. And it was because they had to drive through the jungle, through this remote area that was really fucking intense. Like we were in the back of a truck going up this hill that didn't even look like a road. It looked like like a mountain. And Elena and I like looked at each other. I already had an escape plan. I'm like, fuck, if this thing flips, bro, I'm fucking barrel rolling into the bush. Like, I like that, like literally, like that's where I was at. And like I'll never forget that guy, because he like basically risked his life just to get us to this hotel. You know what I mean? So when we got there, he wanted my shoes and shit, and I'm like, take the shoes, bro. I'm like, take whatever the fuck you want. I'm like, God bless you. I'm like, just get, because I distinctly remember thinking this guy has to get back now. Like getting
Mm.
up there is one thing, but like, now he's got to do the same thing in reverse. It was like treacherous, bro. It was, and then obviously when we got to the hotel, you see like these flocks of people. All the people that are coming in are getting in by a boat. They're landing at this dock and they're coming in. I'm like, okay. I'm like, now I understand why everybody was, giving us this weird look. But yeah, those unspoken bonds that you form with people that often happens just out of sheer coincidence. You know what I mean? It'll be like a cab driver or a tour guide. It doesn't really matter. I know exactly what you mean. You form. There's just that connection. You know what I mean? And I think that's what life is really about. It's just developing connections with people. And some people, you kind of get the sense that they're in your life for a reason. Some people not so much, and that's that is what it is. I don't really look at it much more than that. Um, you know, Me having kids now, I don't quite have the social life I once had. So, the people I do maintain relationships with and speak to and see on a frequent basis, it's for a reason. Like
Mm.
that energy, you feed off that energy, right? It's positive, it's good, and it helps you, it guides you. Um, and I think traveling taught me that really good. I think I've always had a very good sense of reading people and situations, and it's probably gotten me out of a lot of trouble, and it's really kept me safe in a lot of those types of situations. Because when you are abroad, when you're in places like Thailand and God, anywhere, that's not your home or your native tongue, you're taking risks every time you get in a car or a cab or
Hmm.
anything like that. You don't know these people. You don't know, you know what I mean? And I think having a good, that sense of empathy and understanding and feeling other people's emotions, it'll get you far in life because, you make one wrong decision in those types of situations, who knows what's going to happen to you, you know?
For sure.
Yeah.
What I like about traveling through my experience is the ability to strengthen my intuition. Like I'm like, okay, what are we going to do today? Like I'll say to myself, and I'm like, I don't know. We open up the door and we just go. It's like
Yeah.
if my mind's like go right, I go right. If it says left, left, I'm practicing my intuition, and I always end up, and I'm using the word always because I always do end up in some of the most amazing places or the amazing situations. And when I'm
Yeah.
turning in my and I feel it in my gut, I can feel it. Like, don't go this way. I know not to. I
Dude,
know, like,
that's life, bro. I feel the exact same way. It's like a fork in the road, right? Like, I
hmm
think the majority of where you end up in life is based on those decisions. Like it's like a two-way street, right? You go left, who knows what would have happened had you gone right. But if you make those choices, they're like, and I think if you're an empathetic person, it's a lot easier to make those choices. You're not thinking about them as much. It's just sort of like a feeling, like you just said, right? You go with your gut, you go with your instinct, and you just, it guides you. You're not really, and I've been like that my whole life. It's like, if I go out with a certain group of people or if I'm out and I just get this like weird shitty feeling that like, something bad's gonna happen, I fucking dip. I bounce. I'm out. I'm like, I'm not sticking around to find out what fucking happened. I feel like, like this is not the right place or time for me. So, you know, I think it's important that, learning to balance that set of skills and not only, I mean, not learning, just learning that skill of being able to, use your own gut instinct to guide as sort of like a sixth sense, like you really
hmm
are, it helps, man. It can change your whole life. It really can, for the better or for the worse, like the fork in the road. I really do believe that. And I think you've always had a really good sense of that as well. It's kept you out of trouble. It's kept you, sort of in line. And then again, like sometimes you make that decision that puts you in the exact opposite situation where you feel like, you fucked up, like right immediately you're like, oh fuck, like, like what have I done? So, but those experiences you learn from and they put you in a better position the next time to be like, I should have gone with my gut because had I gone with my gut, I wouldn't be in this situation. I feel like a lot of those moments where it is the latter, you're going against your own will, your own sense of guidance, your own GPS, if you will. It's like, I mean, I can't speak for others, but you know what I mean. I think you have a very innate sense like I do. It's sort of like that, it's not a skill set that can be taught. It's something that's learned, you just learn throughout life. And,
hmm
if it works, you don't fix what's not broken, right? So, if it's works this far, I'm gonna continue to use it that way because,
Yeah.
it's like positive reinforcement. You learn through the ups and downs, and if it helps and puts you in a better position in life, great. If not, it is what it is. What are you gonna do? You learn, live and learn.
Yeah, I think it's super important. I got more innate into tuning into it because I decided at a very young age, even with you and other people, I'm like, oh, this looks bad. I'm gonna go walk there. I'm
Yeah,
like, oh, this I shouldn't be here. I can't wait to discover this more. And like
yeah,
eventually, like you really go and you push yourself to those limits, and you're just like, no, you learn what you want, what you don't want. Like I
yeah,
had to learn that I didn't want certain things in my life by, for me, I overindulged in it. And then
yeah.
once I got to the point where I'm like, no, this isn't bringing me what I want, I had
I
to,
I'm the same way, man. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I mean, that's an important life lesson right there, right? I mean, too much of anything, good or bad, has a consequence, and sometimes that consequence, could be your health, it could be your freedom, it could be, and I think, it's no secret, you and I, we were pretty crazy kids. We did a lot of crazy shit at young age, so those lessons I think are better to learn at a younger age because it gives you a sense of, okay, this is right, this is wrong, this is way, way outside the spectrum of right and wrong. Those decisions give you an innate sense of self and that, you can sort of manifest your own destiny by making those decisions. Whereas, people that just tend to go with the flow and not really listen to that inner, guidance, um, they're the ones that ultimately pay, I think, bigger prices, because
Hmm.
they're not listening to the universe. They're just sort of, they're just, carefree, like, cool, I'll do this, I'll do that. And I lived like that for a really long time. I did. But, I also learned lessons along the way. I learned through other people's mistakes. Um, and that was a huge thing for me. It really was. Because when you're caught up with a certain group of people, um, young or old, it doesn't really matter. What other people do can have a serious repercussion on you. I'm not just talking in terms of the law. I'm talking about the impact it has on you mentally, things that you see, experience. So, that I think it's really important, man. It is. It's a very it's an important skill set to have. Being empathetic
Well,
and
here's a question that I want to ask you, because as we go through these journeys in our lives, and there's friends that come in and out of our life, it's just like, what's your stance on forgiveness?
I'm actually a pro forgiveness. I'm a very forgiving person. Um, and I think I really couldn't tell you why. I just don't really think that the world, like, I mean, people come into your life for a reason. I firmly believe that. Um, some people will wrong you, some worse than others. But I think you taking that stance and being able to forgive them, as well as sort of forgive yourself in a lot of situations,
Hmm.
helps you grow, and it also helps you heal a lot faster. You know what I mean? It's like ripping the band-aid off. You don't, I don't dwell on things, like from the past and shit like that. I look forward, because if I did that, it would consume me. I would spend my
Hmm.
entire day thinking about all the shitty things that I've done, and vice versa that have happened to me. It's like you have to have a very, I think that forgiveness is sort of like the tool of the empath. You know what I mean? Because it fucks people up sometimes when you forgive them if they've wronged you. They can't understand that, because they themselves would never be able to do something like that. Sometimes people are trying to piss you off. They want to get a sense of your reaction, and by you, showing that side, whether it be anger, hate, jealousy, and envy, any of those things, um, it speaks to the type of person you are. you know. And I think I've been a pretty forgiving person throughout my life. I have a lot of friends that have done things that a lot of people would consider, like terminate the friendship type shit. And I'm like, fuck it. I'm like, bro, you're only here once. I'm not here to judge people. People make mistakes. I've made a lot of mistakes.
Hmm.
And for that reason alone, I'm like, who the fuck am I to be like, oh, okay, you can't, because you did this, I'm not going to talk to you. And don't get me wrong, I have done that with people, but like it's been more because I'm like, I recognize that that person isn't going to benefit me in any way in life, and they're just going to bring me down into that spiral. So, it's like, I think forgiveness is a very important part of life. I do. Um, like, I've heard we've talked about it. You have to be able to forgive yourself for certain things, and at some point, those things catch up with you either way. So, I think forgiveness is a very important part of life.
Hmm.
But like how do you see forgiveness? Like, I just saw something on the news the other day about this widow who was in court literally forgiving the man who murdered her husband. And it, like, the guy who was in cuffs, who's about to go to jail for murder, like, broke down in tears. He's all, because that's the type of power it has, right? It's like, people can't understand how someone could forgive someone for doing something so terrible. But truthfully, what you're doing is you're giving yourself the ability to let go and move on,
100%.
right? The second
100%,
you
man.
the second you don't forgive people, it's like that shit's gonna loop in your brain. You're gonna hold on to it, and until you deal with it, however you want to deal with it, it's gonna be there. So, if you can be a forgiving person and not allow people to irk you or look for revenge and shit like that, it gives you the ability to live life and continue living life, and not let, like, every roadblock that comes up, or every person that's wronged you, don't let them steal that energy from you. Move past it. regardless if they stay in your life or not, that's your decision. It's up to you. But I think, an important part of it is being able to move forward. And
Yeah,
you know,
I agree, man. I think that forgiveness is one of my, like I said, one of the things that I say every night and every morning when I wake up is, may I forgive myself, may I be forgiven, because I'm going to make a mistake. Somebody's going to make a mistake.
yeah,
And that's just what happens. But it's not a mistake. It's just like a learning curve. You're constantly learning. And I believe in my heart, I've done a lot of bad things. I spent 9 years of my life tracking down everybody I could possibly find. And like, I sent them an apology and I'm like,
I
I'm
remember
so,
that. I remember that when you told me that.
and
It's like with AA. It's a very similar thing, right? It helps you heal. You
but
know,
I'm not that person anymore. By forgiving allows me to free myself of the person that I was. And now
yeah,
I don't need them to be like, oh, I forgive you. No, no, I've done my piece. I've asked for forgiveness. I put it out there. I'm good. I can move on. If you forgive
yeah,
me, thank you. But I've forgiven myself. And I hope one day that you can. But my life does not ride on whether you forgive me or not. Because I put it out there. I've said my piece. I've forgiven myself and I moved there.
mm,
The thing about if you don't forgive, what happens is you hold that inside of yourself. And then
mm,
you use a lens of, I was hurt, I was a victim, they did all these things wrong for the rest of your life. And I know that's hard to say because there's some extreme cases out there, but
yeah.
if you can find a way to forgive yourself, at least in the
That
situation,
I agree.
that's
That's the
so
most
important.
important. It's the most important thing. Yeah,
Like
being
maybe
able to
you
forgive
can't
yourself.
forgive the individual for whatever reason it is, but forgive yourself. Like give
Yeah,
yourself, like you,
you're giving yourself an opportunity, man.
sorry.
It's like every time that you don't forgive yourself, you're locking yourself up. You're not letting yourself evolve to that next phase of. It doesn't even have to be next phase of life. It's just like literally the continuum of those thoughts and emotions, right? Um, and I know you to be that type of person because I've witnessed it firsthand. And I agree. I agree with you 100%. I think it's a very important part of life is being able to forgive and I mean, not necessarily forget, but at least move on, you know?
Move on.
I have friends and family, they're in a state of depression or a state of anxiety, and it's based on the past. It's shit that's happened to them, before. And like, I don't like coming at people strong and being like, man the fuck up, like don't be a baby. But like really, like the more you hold on to those negative things in the past, the more it holds up your life. You're just, you're constantly replaying that shit in your head, and it's not helping you. It's just dragging you backwards. You got to look to the future, and sometimes that means forgiving, forgetting, reaching out to people that like that you've wronged or that you feel a sense of that embarrassment or shame because you did something to them. If that speaks to your truth, and you think that you need to be reaching out to them and apologizing, and it helps you move forward, I'm all for it. Um, you're definitely a bigger man than me. I know I have a lot of people that I should have or could have done that with, and I haven't. But it's mostly because the opportunity just really didn't really present itself. You know what I mean? Whereas the times where it has, I have gone out of my way and been like, listen, man, I'm sorry about, this, that, the other. Um, and that feeling, it kind of feels like a weight off your shoulders. You kind of feel like you're letting go of, demons almost.
It's important. Like a lot of times people are like, for example, people will be like, "Oh, you have thick skin." My skin is not thick, but the thing is, I understand my thoughts, my emotions. I
Yeah,
understand the person is not trying to do something to me, but they're trying to figure out their own self.
yeah,
And I find a lot of compassion. By being more compassionate towards the individuals around me, but also compassionate to myself. When I know, like, listen, I forgive and I love people, but right now you're very toxic in my
yeah,
life. I need to move away from you. You know what I
absolutely.
mean? You have to
Yeah,
be able to honor yourself in those situations and understand that the individual that's doing these things towards you, you have the option of moving, no, doing these things that it seems like it's towards you. It's not. They're trying to
yeah,
figure themselves out. And the
yeah,
best thing about that is like you have the choice to walk away, to move it, to understand, to ask questions. Because if all of a sudden it starts triggering you and makes you feel uncomfortable, boom, there's some growth, there's some learning, there's some
yeah,
understanding. So these pivotal points are so important because they help us with our expression. Like why does that hurt so much? Well, let's go back. Let's understand where do I feel like I'm lacking or I'm not enough in my life? Because a lot of us break down to worth. A lot of us break down to value. A lot of us break down to I'm not loved enough, when we could be the furthest from the truth, but we have to discover it our own. So yes,
you're absolutely right. That's exactly it. And going back to the point about thick skin, you're right. I don't think that's something that necessarily means you're thick-skinned, or I think a lot of it does speak to having just the ability to look past certain things and not dwell on certain things. Because the second you put yourself in that cycle, you're stuck in that cycle. And if you're an empathetic person, you're going to take on other people's shit. So being able to let go, move forward, regardless of whatever the fuck happened, those things they'll help you tremendously in life. You'll find yourself living a much happier, more positive life if you're not dwelling on the past or the toxic relationships or whatever it is that
the thing is, like, the thing I was going to say is, like, if you notice that you're catching yourself dwelling on something over and over and replaying over and over ahead, get a pen, get a piece of paper, write it down, look at it, create whatever you want from it, because your memory, it's not like my memory is me. Like, you can go back to your memory. You can gain more perspective in your memory. Our memories are information that we can download at any time to look at and recreate the whole world around us. Not recreate, but understand the world more around us, who we are, who are there, gain more perspective. Because otherwise you're like, oh, they did all this to me, but what happened in their life? What was going on with themselves? Let's write down the memory. Let's make more description, and let's take ourselves away from being this character that we created in the story, and let's now become the author and rewrite it and better understand it so that we can move on to the next chapter in our lives.
Absolutely. That's a great analogy, actually. It is. Thinking of yourself as a character in the book as opposed to being the author. That's a great analogy, because, it's a control thing, right? The second that paradigm shift happens, you feel like you're in the driver's seat again, right? You're in control of your own destiny. You're not just some pawn in this grand scheme of life. That's an important aspect of this, man. That makes a lot of sense, and I couldn't agree more. I think that taking the control back in any given situation, whether it be forgiving someone or just any type of thought-provoking type scenario, having control over it gives you that sense of relief. It's like, I'm in control of my own destiny. I'm in control of my own life. Going back to the forgiveness thing, it's the exact same thing, right? If you want to forgive people and let it go, it gives you that sense of control. You don't feel like you're at the helm of other people, like, oh, this person did me wrong, so now I have to dwell in it for a few days or a few months or a few years or whatever it is. It gives you the ability to look through those things and just look to the future.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, the idea is you can't control others.
Yeah. And you never will be able to, right? I mean,
but he has to see my point and I have to make them, like, you don't have to make it.
A lot of people go wrong there. Yeah. Because, people don't see things the way you see things. People don't have the same set of morals or guidelines that you might have in your life. So, trying to relate to people in that sense, especially when it's, if it's that way, if someone's wronged you and you're looking for, you're right. A lot of the time it is just you forgiving yourself. You might have done something similar to someone back in the day. It doesn't really matter what the circumstance, but the ability to recognize and be in control is a huge aspect of that.
Yeah, it's also, like I said, it's very important that we understand that we're not in control of other people. The only thing that we are is it's not even being in control of ourselves. It's about creating an awareness of ourselves, and through that awareness be able to choose the choices that better serve our life. But when we control the idea of, well, I must be like this in the moment, then you're actually signaling that you don't want to be like that in the moment. Yeah. You're giving all your attention to what you don't want, instead of being like, okay, this moment came, breathing, felt it, now let's move forward and let's try to create something. A lot of times we tend to focus on what we don't want, and we get more of that instead of focusing on what we are and what we do want in our lives. So I think these things are very important. Self-reflection, asking ourselves questions, stuff that I know in school they didn't teach us, but
No, they don't teach you any of that in school. These are those are the types of things that I think, like like going back to traveling and all that stuff. You know, I don't know how to develop those skills or why you develop those skills, but I think some people are just born with it. You have this innate sense of yourself and right and wrong, regardless of if you're following that path or not. You still know what you're doing is right or wrong. Um, and like you said, there's I think that owning up to it is a huge part of it. It is, no question.
yeah, man, taking accountability for your actions are so, because it's like,
Mhm.
okay, well they did this, but what did you do in the situation? Like, don't
Yeah,
put yourself as a victim. Take accountability. Oh man, there's so many things that I've done in my life where I'm just like,
yeah,
once you take accountability for it, then
yeah.
that's the starting road to do a lot of stuff. But yeah, like,
And I think we live in a society now where everyone's a fucking victim. It's like everyone has this victim's mentality now. Like there's just so much. And I'm not trying to like put a negative twist on this whole thing, but you know what I mean, right? It's like so many people have this idea of like, like they're offended by this or they're offended by that. It's like, man, just chill out. Like they're looking for excuses and reasons to be upset, or whereas you should be doing the opposite. As opposed to looking for reasons to be upset and point the finger at people, look in the mirror and be like, why am I saying that? Why am I the one that feels offended? Why am I, you know what I mean? It always comes back to you, really. Especially in those types of scenarios, it always comes back to
100%
you, you
comes
know?
back to you.
Yeah.
It's the triggers. Why is this triggering you? It's just like, well, they should like, listen, there are things in life that, yes, they're old constructs that need to change. The way that animals have been treated, the way that gender roles have been, there's a lot of things that are out there.
Hmm.
But shaming and blaming individuals will only cause more shame and blame going back to you, instead of being like, okay, look at the industry, let's take accountability, what can we change, and then move forward in a very strategic way. Now, I'm not to say that there are different things for other people. Like some people, I need to see something very violent, and some people are like, I don't want to see violent. Teach
Yeah.
your own. All I'm saying is when we try to shoot out negativity on individual, they're not going to just be like, oh, thank you. Let me give you some positivity back. But if you're
Yeah.
able to do it in a way that you're actually incorporating, you're trying to create a
Hmm.
structure and you're helping individuals on their growth or on their change, it makes a difference. And
Hmm.
also understand that when we say things, people are resistant because if I've been doing something my whole life and you tell me something new, I'm not going to be like, yeah, that makes sense. Let me stop everything I've been doing in my life and change it.
Yeah.
People are resistant to change because change brings unknown and it brings questions. And those questions sometimes we just don't want to answer because we're just not in a place to,
Yeah.
because you can only meet people where they're at. So it's also something
Ab-
to be conscious about.
Absolutely. I see in the comments there it says self-improvement is key. And that's something that, that's something you should think about every day, really. It's true. I mean, the more that you improve yourself, and I'm not talking about like I mean working out and all that type of stuff, that's a huge part of it as well, making sure you're taking care of yourself, but mentally, making sure that you're improving, you know, the way you talk to people, the way you challenge yourself, the way you look at other people, like I think we have, a lot of people have this tendency to look down or judge people based on, whatever it might be, the clothing they wear, like the way that they look. It's like I think that's something that's being lost in today's, you know what I mean, in today's universe. Like we need to look past all this shit. It's just like it's makeup. It's just static. Um, and these days, people are being judged more than I think I mean, at any point in human history, because there's such a wide range of, how people want to express themselves.
For sure, man.
I have tattoos, and I love tattoos. I always have, but there's a very big, I wouldn't even say a stigma. Definitely not as much as there used to be. But I mean, even 10 years ago, I remember I'd walk into a store and, some shop clerks would look at me like I was about to pull a gun on them or something. They'd be like, what the fuck? I'm like, I'm here for no Henry, like in a Gatorade. But like, like that type of mentality, it doesn't just, it's not just like a one-sided thing. It doesn't matter whether it's religion or skin color, any of those things. it's something that we have to move past because it's still for like, I mean, look at the president of the United States, man. Like
Hmm.
these are not good examples to set for humanity. They're not setting us up for a win. They're setting us up for a huge loss. You know,
For
it
sure.
terrifies me that someone like that is in a position of power right now. Not to get into politics because I really don't want to get into politics, but
I,
you
I
you know what I mean?
I believe that in life we need a catalyst and we need something to make us see in a different way, to ask questions,
Yep.
because we can't change the system, but we can change ourselves. If we don't like something, then we can develop something not to compete, but something to create in our own lives. Like the president, whatever country it is, will always be the president. There'll be the mayors, there'll be people in power,
Yep.
but you're in the power of yourself. You have the choice to choose whatever you want. If they're doing something that you don't like, then that's saying something to you that maybe, like, why don't you do things that you do?
Yeah.
Why don't you change the scenario? Why don't you change it? Why don't you change the community? Because once that starts trickling into the people around you, that becomes very powerful. And then all of a sudden, the president has no choice because that's the new norm. That's the new way
Hmm.
to be. They have to incorporate it. Look at all
Yeah.
the, for example, plant-based stuff that's going on in the world. It's becoming the new norm. Though not all of it's healthy, it's still changing it, and animals
Yeah.
are surviving. And there's so many different things. Look at gender roles. Women are getting more power. They're getting to be able to go into roles. Look at countries that have only governments with women. Racism is
Yeah.
on a whole new difference. Suicide, like we've taken the norms and we've taken what were considered to be norms. We discovered that they were insane,
Yeah.
and
The
we became
constructs. Yeah. Completely
crazy,
insane.
and we made something that actually makes more sense and to do it. So we're
Yeah.
close. Let me ask you one question before we go.
Sure.
So if you had the chance to speak to your younger self, what would you
Wow.
tell them?
I'd probably start with a nice firm slap across the face. Um, because, I think a huge part of me growing up was just ego, that egotistical side. And, I think everyone deals with that at some point in their life. But um, that was like probably like my biggest flaw was my ego. I had a lot of pride. And,
Mm,
not to say that that's a bad thing. You can use that as a tool for your benefit. But mine had a lot of a negative impact on me. I thought of myself as someone that I don't think I was. And I put a lot of pressure on myself to be that person. And that's I think that the biggest thing I'd say to myself is, like, you need to wake up. You need to stop
mm,
looking at yourself as some sort of, character, like you said, because, at the end of the day, you're right. Like what you said there, that spoke a lot to me, man. It's true. Um, the character and the author. It's a great way of looking at it. And I think that was sort of how I'd see my former self. I was like a character in like a movie, as opposed to being the author or the writer of that movie. Like Destiny was sort of something. You know what I mean. It was a very so. I think that would be my advice. I'd say I'd look myself squarely in the eye and I'd be like, you need to stop looking at yourself as a character in a movie and start realizing that everything you do, everything you say, everything you feel has an impact on the person that you're going to become.
mm,
But that's the hardest part is that I feel like I've dealt with a large part of that. So it's like if that stuff hadn't happened to me in the past, would it have made me the person? Would I be where I'm at now? It's one of those like it's like the chicken and the egg thing, right? Um, so that's tough. That's a hard question to ask, man. But I do. I think I'd probably want to slap myself across the face and just really like make me understand that life isn't just all about you and how you perceive yourself and how others perceive you. It's about asking bigger questions, more important questions, looking at the world, from that perspective is huge. Um, and I made a lot of mistakes when I was a kid, and I think that the only way that you could really deal with those mistakes is going through them. I don't think there's any other way,
There,
So, I think that would probably be the biggest thing. It would just be like a wake up call. Be like, you you need to stop looking at life the way you do, and open up. Don't be so. I had like tunnel vision for a really long time. I was focused on the wrong things, and the only way to really move past that type of stuff is going through it. So I think. Sorry, there's someone suspicious at my door, and I can't tell what they're trying to do. Like, why are you just sitting there, Alana? Anyway, hopefully they're not trying to break into my house. But like I've someone's asked me that question before, and I think I had a pretty similar response because I really don't really know what else you would be able to say other than you are in control of your own destiny, but the selfish way that you see the world right now is not the way.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me a while, man, to get past that. This is like recent. I mean, like even in my mid-20s, I was still living a fabrication of like what I saw as life, as my life. Sorry, I gotta get up. This guy's like looking through my window now, creeping me out. But it's just one of those what if type things.
Yeah.
Hi there.
Hey, I need my milk.
Yep, come on in. Sorry, man. Alana, let me just get my wife. Alana, the Jiffy guy's here for the bed. Anyway, sorry.
It's all good, man.
What would you say to your former self? Because I know you were very similar to me, and it was a very I don't know what the word is. I feel like conflicted every time I think about it because it's like life takes you in a certain direction regardless of who you are or what you think or how you act. But I think a lot of those decisions are made based on who you are when you're a kid. And those forks in the road, whether you decide to go left or right or or maybe build your own path right down the middle, who knows?
Well, the thing is, like, because we're running short on time, the reason I like to ask this question is because we can't speak to our younger selves. And normally the advice that we would give them are things that we're currently going through in our life, things that we're currently finding our way out of. So I think it's really great. I know when, I used to speak to my younger self, and I still do, and I just tell them, like, you're okay, man. Everything's going to be okay. You're worth it. You have value. Tomorrow things will get better. Every day things will get better. Like, you're not dumb. You're not stupid.
You're taking the much brighter side of things. Like, speaking positively, I just walk up and slap myself. Wake up.
But the thing is, but to each their own. Like, what you would need. Like, for some people, they get a slap on the wrist. Like, my life has changed. Like, for me, I had to go through the extreme of the extreme and then be like, okay, I almost lost everything in my life. I'm like, I think it's time to make a change.
Yeah.
I think it's time.
Yeah.
All right, brother. We're close to the time finishing up. I just wanted to acknowledge. Thank you so much, man.
Thank you for having me, man. Always a pleasure talking.
Just give me a sec.
Yep.
Want to acknowledge you before we go. I just want to say thank you, man. I've known you for so many years. I appreciate who you are, who you've been in my life. You've been, a guide. You've been helping me. You've helped me learn, understand myself. I always say, like, you saw me before I saw myself, and that has been one of the most important things in my life. And words can't express how much I love you, how grateful I am for you, and I appreciate you.
Thank you, brother. Vice versa. Much love. I mean, I feel the same way. It's weird when you look back on stuff like that because it's hard to put into words. But it's like you have someone helping guide you the whole time without you really knowing. And I really do feel the same, man. We were. We've been through a lot together, right? Like, I think back and, there's a lot of dark, a lot of happy times, a lot of bad. And so, that balance helps equate, right? It helps balance the friendship. Mm-hmm. And I think we've both had positive influences in each other's lives, which is, that's one thing that you can't take for granted. Absolutely. And thank you again for having me in the chat today, brother. I appreciate it.
Oh, no problem, man. It's my honor. I'm so happy you were able to show up and do this. All right, brother.
No problem.
Love you, man, and I'll chat with you,
brother. Love you too, bro. We'll see you soon. Cheers.